Shalom, this is Avraham Shira. Welcome to our Erev Shabbat talk here on Facebook. This week has been quite a week of learning and davening and explorations of the Torah. We've covered a lot of subjects in the Kabbalah and in Chassidut. But one of the main ideas that struck me this week is that, when you hang around the yeshiva world, you hear a lot of talk about Torah. Well, what else do we talk about? That's why we joined the yeshiva world. Because we love that conversation of an elevated nature. And one of the questions you always hear is, what is daat? What is knowledge? Daat with an ayin. What is knowledge? Because there's all kinds of ways of defining this term knowledge. Of course, the simple idea of daat is what you know, the information you've gathered in your life. And then there's daat, when you take away the aleph, it just means a religion. And then there's daat, which means awareness. You are existing, as Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. Which is an interesting statement. When you think about it, if I don't think, that means I don't exist. Well, actually not true in Judaism. Descartes didn't get it completely right, because if you don't think, you could still be alive and you could still exist, because your neshama is thinking whether your lower self is aware or not. And that can be put into a metaphor in terms of sleep. Now, when you're asleep, are you you? That's what they asked Napoleon. How can you only sleep 1 hour a night? And Napoleon answered, well, when I'm asleep, I'm not Napoleon. So, I guess Napoleon liked being Napoleon, at least for a portion of his career, maybe not on Elba Island. But nonetheless, what is daat? The knowledge of how to make breakfast, the knowledge of how to get to work, the knowledge of how to say nice things to people, the knowledge how to wage war. They all seem to fit into the category of daat, of knowledge. But we're going to take it a little further with the help of Rabbi Nachman and the Baal Shem Tov. Rabbi Nachman has taught us in Torah Hey, the second section of Likutei Moharan, that everybody has an intelligence or daat, but everyone has a limit to their intelligence. Just beyond your limit, just beyond your intelligence, is where your faith must begin. Faith begins where you don't know, otherwise it's not called faith. So we honor the definition by drawing a line. What I know is knowledge. It's a certain level of personal knowledge. But faith begins past my understanding. It begins past the places I've been with my little information processor called a brain. Faith is based on knowing there's something, but I don't know what it is that I'm believing in. Oh, there we go. We just jumped to belief. Okay. How does this help us? Well, it's like this. We all exist in time and place and an intention. That's called a world. Your mind is a world. It exists in time, here and now. It has a place wherever you're sitting or relaxing or driving, whatever you're doing. And it has intention. Whatever you're doing right now, there is intention attached to it. It could be a very high intention, like learning Torah before Shabbat. And it could be more of the everyday type of intentions that we have to keep going on this planet. Okay. So with those three ideas in mind, time, place, and intention, we have a world and a place of existence. Now God says, you know what? I'm going to give you another place. It's a gift. It's called Shabbat. It's above time. It's above place. And it has a very specific set of intentions. On Shabbat, I'm not allowed to think about what I'm going to invest in the market on Monday morning when the Borsa opens, when the stock market, ding, 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 rings that come get the money bell. You know? On Shabbat, I'm not going to be thinking about the tax man who's waiting outside the door on Monday morning either. Usually he shows up in the mailbox, but okay, it's easier to deal with. On Shabbat, I'm not going to think about what am I going to eat Monday, etc., etc. So God circumscribes Shabbat. He makes it smaller in our mind. Smaller time and place, smaller sets of intentions. Why? Because only from setting those boundaries can I experience something much greater. Can I experience that world above this world? The world where I don't have to worry. The world where I don't have to be afraid. The world where I might suffer physically. People that are ill in it. They have pain on Shabbat as well. But Shabbat is that little mini capsule of time and place that gives us a sense of the world to come. A little mini drama of how it's going to be when we transform this physical plane into a spiritually dominated realm. Okay. How does all this relate to knowledge and, as I said in the title, divine inspiration? Well, it's like this. When I have the experience of faith, then my idea of knowledge changes. Suddenly, I see that the idea of knowledge being your collective information, or the idea of knowledge being your awareness, is not enough of a definition. When I have faith, Rabbi Nachman says, you will experience the miracle of things. When you experience the miracle of things, that the fact that this world exists is a miracle, then I understand that knowledge, true knowledge, is knowing what God wants from me now and every moment. True knowledge is not your collective information, your personal Wikipedia. True knowledge is simply knowing what God wants from me the next moment and in this moment. And then I go through that moment and another moment comes along and another time comes along. Because remember what we said, worlds are prescribed through time and space and intention. So I'm going from world to world. I'm going from place to place. I'm going from my house to my car to my job. 3 different worlds. 3 different intentions. They're connected, obviously. But maybe God needs me to stop somewhere along the way to work to help somebody. Or maybe when I get to work, the doors are locked because something has happened and I have to do something else. So true knowledge is knowing that I don't know, but there is a knower. And he's going to reveal to me what I need to know for now. God doesn't need to flood you with the future, nor does he need to drown us in the past. We need to know simply one thing, what to do next and do it well. And when we understand that, my friends, listen closely. When you know what God wants from you, that's a little bit of prophecy. Because what is prophecy? It's God telling you what you need to do. Now, if you're Isaiah and you're going to go tell the people of Jerusalem that the temple's going to be destroyed in 20 years, they're like, 20 years? Give me a break, Isaiah. Go back to yeshiva. And Jeremiah came along. This temple's going to be destroyed by the king of Babylon, and he's getting more and more specific. For 20 years, he was screaming. Okay, Jeremiah, you're starting to bother us. Until they murdered him. And who murdered him? The Kohanim. Not all of them, but the radical ones. And his blood was the blood that was boiling in the Mikdash until a terrible atonement was exacted by a Roman general. But nonetheless, these places in our history, they're important to learn about because they happen in different ways in different times. And they could be happening today and we don't even know it. But to be a prophet, I don't need to scream about the destruction of the Mikdash. That's already happened. And to be a prophet, you don't have to scream about the Messiah is coming. My Messiah, your Messiah, the Jewish Messiah, the Christian one, the Islamic one. This is silliness. There is no Messiah until the key is turned in the door of the third temple. At least that's the Jewish definition. Now, whoever turns that key, he's the man. But until then, there's no prophecy. I don't know why I jumped over to that concept of Messiah, but the point is, to know what God wants from us is a spark of the divine inspiration that we need to conduct our lives properly. I don't need to know the big picture on every single question. I need to know the little picture of my life, moment by moment. And you know, when you sit down and you take a few deep breaths and you close your eyes and you relax and you give yourself time to think and you give yourself honor as a child of the Creator, as a person who carries a spark of divine inside you, all of a sudden that spark starts to flicker. It starts to want to communicate with you. Now the mitzvah of prayer, according to the Rambam, the Maimonides, who was the chief doctor of the Sultan of Egypt at about the year 1200, he says the chief mitzvah of prayer is not to stand there every day, you know, making the 18 blessings 3 times a day. That's wonderful. That's amazing practice. But the chief mitzvah of prayer is to cry out to God when you're desperate, when you need to know things. So who wants to be desperate? Nobody wants to be desperate. But when we understand that every moment of our lives is an opportunity to draw the inspiration of the highest self into the lower self, my consciousness, then all of a sudden I see that I'm inviting God into a very intimate place. I'm saying, God, tell me what to do. Guide me. I need your help. Should I go to the mall or not? What? You're going to talk to God about going to the mall? Get over it. That's what people think. You know, when I first started practicing these things, my wife thought I was crazy until she understood that it actually helped us live. Have you prayed about it, honey? Pray about it, honey. Take 5 minutes. Take 3 minutes. And all of a sudden, we start to realign ourselves with that higher self. And that's a spark of divine inspiration. And that's true knowledge to know what God wants for me. And that's based on the faith that this whole system works and that there's a creator behind this magnificent creation that we find ourselves in. And how I do it is I want to create that little Shabbat inside my mind. Can you create Shabbat in your heart? That place that's only for that special time? So that's a work, and that's the work. And we're doing that work on Patreon. Come see us over there. We have new classes coming out all the time. And poetry and essays. And join us in the project because we We are enlisting people to join their creativity with ours and asking people what classes you'd like to learn about in Kabbalah and asking you what kind of questions you have to answer. And it's happening on that platform. It's a very easy way of communicating. So join us. Look for us on YouTube, on Web Yeshiva, and other outlets. And have a great Shabbat. And try to make that little place inside for your higher self to come down. You'll be glad you did. Shabbat Shalom. We'll see you next week.